Welcome to Free Principles Conversations with Christian McNeill, a series of conversations with Free Principles practitioners exploring a new explanation of how humans work. Insight into this understanding can help transform quality of life, relationships, and state of mind.
Hello, welcome to this edition of Three Principles Conversations. And today I am absolutely delighted to be in conversation with Mavis Karn, who has been a huge help and influence in my life and helping me understand this work. And the title of today's call is You Can't Slip a Thought Past the Body. And that's something that I learned from Mavis, and it was one of those things I heard, and I thought, oh yes, oh yes. But for anyone who hasn't yet heard it or understood it, Mavis. Well, before we even go there, because this recording is going to be part of our podcast, could I just invite you to tell anyone listening a little bit about yourself, and then perhaps we can move on to the meat of today's conversation.
Sure. Let's see. What would be a good thing to tell you?
How did you
Um,
get into this work?
well, this work didn't, my work, my personal work didn't start with the principles with Sid Banks. It started long before that, where I was a counselor, therapist, I guess, and worked in the way everyone worked then, that we met with people to figure out what was wrong with them and figure out how to fix them. And I loved my work. And when I started learning about the principles, I was working at a place called the Bridge for Runaway Youth in Minneapolis, working with kids who had run away from home, and then we worked with them and then tried to help them reunite with their families. And about that, I was there for several years, and about, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 years into it, I started getting just so tired of trying to fix people. And I started feeling like I knew how to help people find out what was wrong with them. I could diagnose them, but I didn't know how to help anybody be happy.
Mm,
And I also wished I was happier. It wasn't that I was unhappy, but there was a lot of stress in my life. I was a single mom, 3 kids, and um, I was stressed way more than I wanted to be. And one day, my boss at the shelter said he had been asked to come to a presentation at the University of Minnesota Graduate School in psychology to hear 3 PhD uh, psychologists from Florida talk. And he couldn't go, and he wanted to know if I would go in his stead. So that meant a couple days off work. I'd go hear a giraffe talk to get a couple of days off work. So great, go. So um so it turned out these were again 3 PhD psychologists from Florida who've been spending a, a lot of time with a man named Sid Banks, a Scottish guy who was a welder that had had some insights that apparently were astonishing people. And I remember the very first thing I really heard, was that there's nothing wrong with people. It's just that everything is happening to us is our thinking. And I thought the top of my head was going to come off. It was like everything I thought I knew was up for grabs. And I knew I was hearing something. and it felt a lot like truth. And I didn't hear much else after that because I was so busy trying to find a place in my head to put the idea that what we were feeling all the time is our thinking, and that that's all it ever was. So I spent the next few months trying to disprove that.
Mm.
Well, a single mom, three kids, hardly ever having enough money and all kinds of stress and da 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 da. That's not my thinking. Anybody in that situation would feel a lot of stress. Except then I thought, well, does everybody, does every woman with three kids and not enough money feel the same way all the time? And, I couldn't say yes to that, even though it was hard to say no to it. And I kept testing myself with that. Well, what about when somebody close to you dies? That's not your thinking. That's because somebody died. But then I would say, well, does everybody experience the death of a loved one in the same way for the same length of time? And common sense would say no. So I kept doing that for a while. But all the while I was doing that, I was starting to feel a little better about things. I was enjoying myself a little bit more, and I hadn't even kind of noticed that. And I got an opportunity to go and see this Banks person. And a friend of mine convinced me that it was a good idea, Joe Bailey. And so I did. I didn't understand a word what this guy said. Part of it was that he had this Scottish brogue that, as beautiful as it was, I had no idea what he was talking about. But he was really cute and funny, and so I liked that part of him, but I didn't understand why anybody thought he was such a big deal. Mostly because I just couldn't understand what he was saying. But I felt better. There were a lot of people there that were just enraptured with what he was talking about. And I thought, well, that's nice. But what are they hearing that I'm not hearing? But the feeling was so nice. Long story short, it started to just become clearer to me and clearer that there really isn't anything wrong with anyone. We just don't understand that we are always feeling our thinking. We are not feeling what's going on outside of us. We are feeling the meaning we're making of what's going on outside of us.
Mm.
And that started to feel more and more and more like the truth. And I started catching myself at some habits of worrying and being afraid of how things might turn out. I would catch myself at reliving some mistakes I'd made in the past, or I'd catch myself and go, wait a minute, this is just my thinking. This is the way I'm thinking about it. And it was clumsy because at the same time that I realized it was my thinking, I was also trying to justify my thinking. And so it was very, very clumsy at first. But slowly, maybe it wasn't as slow as I thought, but it felt like slowly over time, I just thought less and felt better.
Mm.
I I started seeing so clearly the connection between how I was feeling and what I was thinking. And I started, Sid would always say, just follow a feeling. You'll just follow a feeling. I had no idea what he was talking about. But somewhere in there, my description of that started to be, oh, it's a sensation, a sensation. Every thought is a sensation that I feel in my body. Because I would notice when I was worrying, my shoulders would start going up under my ears, and I was tense. And that was my thinking. I was feeling it in my shoulders. I was feeling anxiety in my stomach. I was feeling anger and whatever else I was feeling in my tightening of my jaw. Every thought I had, I felt in my body. And I started realizing that a sensation and a thought are one thing. They're one thing. They're a psychological event created by us, knowingly or unknowingly, mostly innocently.
Hmm.
And it just got simpler and simpler. That's what it is. It's none of my business what I'm thinking. My business is how am I feeling?
Yes, and there's something in that. You coined this phrase, but you can't slip a thought past the body, and I found that tremendously helpful because my tendency when I'm caught up in my mind and using my mind against myself is to be really busy and future orientated. So there's no room for noticing what I'm doing to
Yeah,
myself. I'm just on a mission and I'm
yeah,
going.
been there, done that.
And I it's been incredibly helpful. And on one occasion, after I'd heard you use this expression, I caught myself in that say I was going to an early morning meeting. I was a little late. I kept getting red lights, and then all of a sudden, as I was driving along, I thought, "Oh my God, my I am so tense." And just that noticing of the tension was enough of an invitation to just drop it without getting into what my thinking, how important, just and then as I got caught in the next red light, there was room to think, none of this matters. What am I doing? To recognize what I had innocently been entertaining in my own
Yeah,
head. And I didn't need to start to, examine it under the microscope or anything. I
yeah,
just needed to notice, oh, I'm tense. And I let that go. And, sailed into the meeting a little bit late, which did not matter one iota.
yeah.
But I was
Isn't,
relaxed and calm again.
isn't that amazing?
Hmm.
It's that simple.
Hmm. Hmm.
You notice you're feeling and relaxed.
Hmm.
Can't be that simple. But what if it is? What if every sensation we experience is guiding information as to how we're using the gift of thought?
Yeah.
What if it's that profound and that simple and that amazing that we're made that way and we didn't know it? So, in my world, the only diagnosis is we either know how beautifully we're made and that we're always feeling or thinking, or we don't. And I forget that sometimes, not for long anymore. I get pretty intolerant of self-created misery.
Mhm.
But it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with anything I feel.
Yeah.
No- Nothing. But I just know that whether I'm feeling miserable or sad or upset or scared or kind or compassionate or loving or creative or whatever I'm feeling is letting me know the quality of the thinking I'm doing.
Yeah. And there's something about because the body can only be here now. I mean, the mind can, in its imagination, be off in the future
Yeah,
or over there or comparing or in the past, but the body can only be here now. And it's an arbiter, or it's a It's giving a signal of what's happening here now in the mind,
Yeah,
brings us back
yeah.
to that, and I think that there's something before we came on the call, maybe as we were talking, um, we were talking about insight, and that everybody is built for insight and the capacity for insight, and a fresh thought and a new perspective just
Mhm.
happens in a nanosecond. But it seems to me that there's some connection in that noticing of what the body's doing. It's as though it opens up the
Mhm.
way for insight. And I don't know if that's
That's right. That's
something
right.
that you'd say more about.
Most of us, if we got paid by the thought, we'd be gazillionaires. We just we just get so
Mhm.
busy headed, trying to figure things out and analyzing and processing and so on. But there's a space between thoughts where an insight can pop through. And I know everybody that's listening to us, everybody has had a moment when they were trying to figure something out. Maybe they were trying to remember somebody's name and they were using all their name remembering gimmicks and nothing was happening. They couldn't find it. And finally, they just got tired of it and said, forget it. Within minutes, that name pops up. It wasn't hiding, it was there all the time. There was just so much noise, it couldn't be seen and heard and felt. That's the science that when we're busy up here sorting through stored data, trying to find the answer to something, we're making so much mental noise. We can't hear our own wisdom and our own common sense that is always ready to show us what we need in that moment for that circumstance.
Yeah.
It's it's just whoever invented that really should get a really big bonus. It's just a, astonishing engineering that we're made of that we can not only retrieve memory for our use or misuse, but we can receive information that didn't come from our brain. It came to it from that intelligent energy that we're all made of and that everything is made of.
Yeah. Yeah. How I have been sort of seeing it recently, again, we were speaking before the call, and this week is the anniversary of me stopping drinking many years ago, which was it was a big shift in my life. And I think um, but today I see all of that as a step towards the spiritual, if you like. And I say that as someone who in my 20s, I was not interested in the spiritual. I was agnostic, possibly atheist, and my life was becoming more and more unmanageable. And I was introduced to this idea through a book I read, actually, that in order to find some kind of order or manageability in my life, I had to open up to the spiritual. And as you can imagine, that was not an attractive
Mhm,
proposition. It's like you have to believe there's elves at the bottom of the
mhm,
garden. It seemed like. But today, I see that journey. And I did, I was willing, it got bad enough that I was willing to try anything, if you like. Um, and it was, you know, 20 years after I got sober, something like that I stumbled across the three principles,
mhm.
which was the next evolution in my spiritual journey. But how I see it is that it's as though as little human beings, we learn, we learn how to operate in life and to walk and talk and feed ourselves and do all that stuff, and we learn intellectually. And my observation is that this spirituality, this true self is another dimension that's always been there. It's
Mhm.
always been there. But that there is a process of awakening to it, which my observation is often something that happens in adulthood for people. Maybe the people who are very consciously connected with it at a younger age, I don't know. But and this work, the three principles, is has been the most important step for me in awakening to that. And what you're talking about, the because I thought that the ultimate experience of being human was the intellect, and now I see that more. That's really more of the ego, and that this I often refer to as a wellspring of spiritual resources that are in us and that we are of. That is kind of when the intellect quiets, and the this thing that you're pointing to, the body as um, as a conduit to that those resources has just been enormously helpful.
Yeah.
Um, and when the when I become aware that I'm using my mind against myself, I'm more likely to be able to connect with those inner resources that have always been there. It's not about me honing them or making them stronger or better or working the spiritual muscle. It's always been there. I was just innocently getting in my own way.
Yeah.
And but it's always been there, which is why everybody has been having insights. They just probably haven't noticed them so much or given them the weight or the respect that they
Yeah.
deserve, because they don't fully appreciate what's going on. There's this whole
Yeah.
dimension that's operating, but we haven't been educated into it. And or for many people, I speak for myself, I had not been educated into it. I did not
Yeah.
know what I had going for me. And this work is the thing that has really opened my eyes to it, opened my heart to it.
The innocence is so important that we see that
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
that what we were all looking for is a feeling
Hmm.
of safety, of security, of worthiness, of peace and love.
Mm.
We were all just shopping at stores that didn't have that. We were shopping up here in our intellect for it. We were shopping for it in other people or circumstances or bank accounts or some. We were shopping for a feeling that we needed to have. We were shopping where it wasn't.
Yeah,
It was always right under our nose. And what it all is the intelligent energy of all things is what we're made of. We're made of that. There are no flaws in creation, and we are made with that perfect intelligence. And that comes to us from us. It's it's amazing for me to know now and trust something so simple is that if I just show up in the moment, the right next step, what I need for the moment will show up with me
yeah,
every time, every time. And I am not made any differently than anybody else. We are all capable of that. And in a thousand different ways, those things have happened to us. Like you stop trying to figure something out, and all of a sudden something comes to you that's never occurred to you before. That's not magic. That's divine science.
yeah,
That's not that's not it's not religion. That's the perfect intelligence of all things, which is spiritual.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so true. And I know you're probably sick of hearing me say this, but my lesson of the year, which I learned from you, was something you said in one of our calls with clients, that everything that seemed to go wrong in the past was because you didn't know what you know now. And again, it was one of those things that hit me deeply, that is so true. And it's not because life has passed you by, or that there haven't been losses and illnesses and bereavements and all of those kind of things that happen in everybody's life, but once we begin to understand how we're really made, then we're tuned into guidance and wisdom. We're
Yeah.
open to those insights, not knitting into every dark thought or fearful thought or regretful thought,
Mhm.
making those bigger innocently. I mean, which is kind of how I lived. So the 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 same the very same events will produce a completely different experience of life. Or the events don't produce anything, but our navigating those
Mhm.
same events will be completely different if we know what we've got going for us,
Yeah.
what's available
Yeah.
to us, and how not to just innocently make it worse for ourselves. It's just extraordinary. And it's like compound interest over time. The change is just phenomenal. Over one day, it's not that big a deal. Sometimes it is a big deal in one day, in 1 second, but
Mhm.
over time, that the change is absolutely phenomenal.
And it's natural.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not supernatural. It's
No,
natural.
one of my colleagues here in Glasgow told me that his partner, who is not really interested in our work and doesn't quite get it, described my colleague to a bunch of friends as, oh yeah, David's in a cult. And it's interesting because it seems to me like it's the antithesis of a cult, because a cult is all about one person or a group of people telling others what to do and
Yeah.
using them for their sort of selfish
Yeah.
ends. And this work is really about awakening to each person who encounters it, to what
Yeah.
they've got going for them, and enabling them to find their own answers and
Yeah.
carve their own path out in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cults are just a bunch of people looking on the outside for what they have on the inside, and they didn't know they were shopping at the wrong store.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. They just didn't. I,
Mm.
I didn't, and I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with me. I just didn't know where to look for what I thought was missing.
Yeah.
Turns out it wasn't missing,
Mm.
and I didn't know that it was inside me. It was built inside me. The the beauty and the magnificence of the whole is built into all of us,
Yeah.
and we just didn't know that. It is nobody's fault.
Mhm.
There's no one to blame. It's it's like you mentioned your celebration of your sobriety. Given what I know now, um, it makes sense that everybody would um, try to look on the outside if they thought their negative feelings were the enemy. It
Mm.
makes sense that one would want to numb those enemy feelings of insecurity or anger or trauma or what. It makes sense to me that if you didn't know what feelings are for, you would want to numb the ones you don't want to have.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But if someone comes along and asks you to consider the possibility that every feeling you have is on your side. Every feeling you have has your back. We are made so well that every sensation we have is guiding information, guiding us back to experience the magnificence of our own existence. That's a big thing, except it's natural and it's simple.
Yeah.
It's when I get scared, I can feel it in my body. It's sharp. It's sharp. It feels like I swallowed something sharp. That sensation is just saying to me, this is how it feels to think the way you're thinking right now. It's not telling me what to do. It's not shaming me. It's just saying, this is how it feels to think the way you're thinking right now. It's that simple. Every sensation is just love in disguise.
Mm.
Fear is not the enemy. It's just saying you're terrorizing yourself with your thinking right now. You know this, but in April of this year, within a 3-week period, both my sister and my brother died, and they were um, 80 and 81 and 83. And my sister's death was expected. She'd been ill for a long time, but my brother's was not. And he and I were buddies since he was my baby Davy brother. And he got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and 3 weeks later he died. I was so mad at whoever is running things, if there's a God, I would have punched him. I was so angry. And then I was sad. And then I was grateful that he didn't have to suffer too long. And then this, and then this. None of what I was feeling was wrong. All of all of each feeling was temporary.
Mhm.
It was the sensation of whatever I was thinking in that moment. I am so grateful I know that. It didn't stop me from being sad and angry and frustrated and all the things I felt. But I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just feeling a bunch of thinking that was temporary, and I wasn't always going to feel this way, but I'm feeling this way now, and that's all I need to know. I'm just so grateful that I understand that. When my first baby died, he just lived a week. He had a hole in his heart. And anybody that's ever lost a child knows that you can be assured that you're never going to feel that bad again. But what I didn't know then is that it was temporary.
Mm.
I didn't know then. I don't know if I thought this or not, but it never occurred to me that I would ever be happy again. Never. I thought you couldn't possibly ever have a happy moment if your child died. But see, that's not how we're made.
Yeah.
That's not how we're made. We're not, a loving universe isn't going to make you suffer the rest of your life if your child dies. But if you don't know how you're made, you might suffer through the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might keep reliving the trauma without knowing that that's optional.
Yes, and that's the bit that we're going to be looking at in our next series about the where we've innocently kind of bought into that optional idea, that false idea. And I had mine wasn't the loss of a child, but when relationship broke up and I became a single parent, I just thought that my life was, my happy life was essentially over.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that, the worst part of it is because I did not know then what I know now. And that because I believed that, I was living as if it was true. And I failed to notice the moments, even then, that of early on when there was happiness. I
Yeah.
joined the dots to confirm what I believed was the truth. And,
Yeah.
and one of the wonderful things about this work is the freedom that comes, to
Mhm.
set oneself free from that trap, from those kind of invisible contracts that we've
Yeah.
written ourselves without even knowing it. Maybe this has just been lovely. I'm conscious of time. I'm thinking this might be a good place to leave this conversation, but thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me. I love hanging out with you.
Well, ditto. I think it feels a bit of a one-sided
Yeah.
relationship on that regard. Yeah, but we have been running short webinar series for quite a few years now. We've got one starting in January 26th.
We're
So there'll
just
be
getting the hang of it, aren't we?
yeah,
Yeah.
details
Keep
below.
doing it. Yep.
And if any of this appeals to you, please do check out those details. And thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Most welcome.